Force yourself to take action. Introduction. You wake up and check your phone. You tell yourself you will start soon, but you drift into distractions without even realizing it. You move through your day, doing what is familiar, what is easy, what does not push you. The real thing, the thing that matters most, sits in the back of your mind untouched. You keep it there, convincing yourself that you will get to it later, but later becomes just another version of now. And now is full of excuses dressed up as reasons. That is where most people live, stuck in movement that leads nowhere. This audiobook is not here to inspire you. It is here to activate something you have been avoiding, the part of you that moves with force, not with motivation, not with mood, but with command. You do not need more time. You do not need more advice. You need to get used to doing the hard thing the moment it presents itself. And once you build that habit of acting when it is uncomfortable, of showing up without a second thought, you become dangerous. You become someone who does not need to feel ready to do what must be done. That is what this book is about. Not ideas, not potential, just power and how to use it on demand. Chapter 1. Make it hard to quit. Let's get honest about something. Most people don't fail because they're weak. They fail because they've made quitting too easy. They've left the exit door wide open and put a welcome mat in front of it. In other words, their environment is built for escape, not execution. They say they want to change, but everything around them is designed for comfort, and comfort will always win against discipline unless you make action the path of least resistance. This is why you should never rely on willpower, not because willpower doesn't matter, but because it was never meant to carry the whole load. Willpower is a great spark, but a terrible power source. It burns hot and dies fast. You can't count on it to be there when you need it most, especially when you're tired, stressed, distracted, or alone. But if you build a system where action becomes automatic, then you don't need to negotiate with your brain every single day. You just follow the structure, and when the structure is strong, success becomes almost inevitable. Let's start with a real-world example. Imagine someone says they want to work out every morning. That's their goal. But they wake up, and their gym shoes are still in the closet. Their workout gear is somewhere in a drawer. The room is cold. Their phone is within reach. Instagram is one tap away. The cereal box is staring at them from the kitchen. Now ask yourself, is that person lazy, or is their environment designed to make quitting easy? The answer is clear, and it's not a judgment. It's a setup. If you want to change your behavior, you have to change the architecture of your life. Behavioral science calls this choice architecture, the way your environment shapes the options you are most likely to take. Studies from Duke and Columbia have shown that when you manipulate the default choices people face, you radically increase the likelihood of a specific behavior occurring. Want someone to eat healthier? Put fruit within reach and bury the cookies in the back of the cabinet. Want someone to read more? Put the book on their pillow, not their shelf. Want someone to get up earlier? Put the alarm clock across the room and block notifications after 9 p.m. None of these are about willpower. They are about design, and design wins. So what does this mean for you? It means if you are serious about taking action consistently, you have to create what I call action traps. An action trap is any setup in your environment that makes movement easier and quitting harder. It traps you in the right direction, not by force but by friction. You create small systems of inconvenience around the wrong behavior and ease around the right one. Over time, the path of least resistance starts working in your favor instead of against it. Here's a basic example. You want to eat better. Instead of relying on willpower to resist junk food, you simply don't keep it in your house. Now, if you want to eat a bag of chips, you have to get dressed, walk out the door, go to the store and buy it. That friction is enough to break the impulse. You've made quitting harder. Or let's say you want to run every morning. You leave your gym shoes at the foot of your bed, you put your workout clothes in the bathroom, you queue up a playlist the night before. The moment you open your eyes, your next steps are already paved. There's nothing to think about, no choices to weigh, just follow the trap. The power of action traps is that they remove choice in the moments when your brain is weakest. Most decisions are not made with logic. They're made with energy, and the less energy you have, the worse your decisions get. That's why athletes, writers, entrepreneurs, and creators often create rituals or rules. It's not because they're rigid, it's because they've learned that freedom lives inside structure. When you build a life where taking action is the automatic response, you don't have to wrestle with your own mind anymore. One of the most effective forms of an action trap is the public deadline. You tell people what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. You write it down, you post about it, you create external accountability. This taps into one of the deepest human drives, the need to stay congruent with your social image. In a study from the American Psychological Association, participants who committed to a goal publicly were 65% more likely to complete it than those who kept their goal private. And those who added follow-up accountability, someone checking in, had up to a 95% success rate. Let's go deeper. You want to write a book? Schedule a weekly post where you publish an excerpt every Friday. Now the pressure is not just in your head, it's alive, real, visible. That discomfort you feel, that's the trap working. You've made quitting annoying. You've raised the cost of inaction. That pressure becomes fuel. It's not about shame, it's about structure. You're using social psychology as a lever to pull yourself forward. Another form of an action trap is commitment through constraint. This means designing your environment so you have fewer opportunities to fail. You delete delivery apps. You block distracting websites during your working hours. You log out of Netflix after 9 p.m. You keep your phone in another room while writing. You make failure inconvenient, and at the same time, you make action obvious. You build physical cues, like leaving your journal on your desk, your guitar on the stand, your project checklist on your whiteboard, so you can't ignore what matters. Visibility builds urgency. Urgency builds follow-through. There's also digital design. If your phone is stealing your time, you redesign it. Remove social media from your home screen. Use grayscale mode to kill visual stimulation. Move all entertainment apps into a folder labeled wasted hours. Use screen time locks, even if you have to set the password, and hand it to a friend. Don't rely on being strong in a moment of weakness. Build systems that keep you focused without needing to be strong at all. Then there's the most powerful action trap of all, creating a streak. Streaks are addictive because they speak directly to your identity. When you've done something 5, 10, 20 days in a row, you don't want to break it. You feel a sense of pride, progress, ownership. You become emotionally invested in the chain. That feeling is leverage. Use it. Start with something small. Read for 10 minutes. Do one push-up. Write one sentence. Repeat it daily. Track it on a wall. And when the day comes that you don't want to show up, you'll show up just to protect the streak. That's not weakness. That's design, doing its job. Now let's be real. Life will throw curveballs. No system is bulletproof. There will be days when everything feels heavier than usual. But the beauty of action traps is that they carry you through those days. You don't have to feel inspired to do what matters. You just have to follow what you already set up. And that's the secret. You create the setup when you're clear, so you can follow it when you're not. That's how real transformation happens. Not through willpower explosions, but through daily design. Start today. Pick one action that matters to you, something you've been avoiding, delaying, or struggling to stay consistent with. Then build one action trap around it. Make the right move automatic and the wrong move annoying. Make quitting harder than continuing. Stack small points of friction where your old habits used to live. Replace them with simple triggers that pull you forward. You don't need to rebuild your life in one day. You just need to start trapping yourself into progress, one system at a time. Because at the end of the day, willpower will fail, but design will hold you up. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And when your system is strong, quitting doesn't feel like an option, it feels like a disruption. So build a life where taking action feels natural and quitting feels like the harder path. That's not punishment, that's freedom by design, and it's how people who seem unstoppable actually live. They're not stronger, they're just smarter with their structure. You can be too, starting now. Chapter 2. Kill the thought, take the step. Researchers at Harvard and MIT studying cognitive delay have found that when people pause for more than 5 seconds before taking action, the likelihood of following through drops dramatically. That means you can have a strong idea, a real desire, and a meaningful goal, but if you do not act within seconds, your chances of doing it begin to fall. This has nothing to do with discipline or talent. It has to do with how the brain is wired. Your mind is designed to protect you, not push you. It seeks efficiency, comfort, and safety. If something feels risky, uncertain, or unfamiliar, your brain begins scanning for reasons to avoid it. You may not even realize this is happening because it disguises itself as logic. You start thinking things like, I need more time, or I should wait until I feel ready, or I'll do it after this one other task. But in reality, your brain is activating its defense system. It is stalling. Hesitation may feel harmless, but neurologically it is powerful. When you hesitate, your brain shifts from the prefrontal cortex, the part that drives action, decisions, and focus, into the limbic system, which is responsible for emotion and survival. That shift happens in seconds, and once it does, your decision-making is no longer clear or objective. It is reactive. It becomes about avoiding discomfort rather than chasing progress. This is why so many people struggle with getting started. The problem is not the action itself. The problem is the mental spiral that forms around it. The more you think, the more doubt you generate. The more doubt you generate, the more pressure you feel, and that pressure convinces you to stop. You cannot overthink your way out of overthinking. You cannot logic your way through fear. The only way to escape that mental loop is by moving, not planning, not talking about it, not researching for hours, moving. The body has to lead. That first act of movement tells your brain the decision has already been made, and the thinking can stop. And once movement begins, momentum starts to form. One step activates the nervous system in a completely different way. The longer you sit still, the heavier action becomes. The faster you move, the lighter it feels. To train this response, you need a tool that is simple and powerful enough to override the brain's resistance in real time. That tool is called the 3-step lunge. It is a counting sequence that gives your brain a limited window to object. You count down from 3, 2, 1, and then you move. You do not pause after the count. You do not renegotiate the task. You move, you stand up, you click the tab, you walk out the door, you say what needs to be said, you open the document, you take the smallest physical action connected to the thing you were resisting, and you do it without waiting for confidence, clarity, or motivation. The science behind this is based on what is known as a pattern interrupt. When your brain enters a loop of avoidance, counting backward disrupts the rhythm. It breaks the connection between thought and paralysis. It engages the prefrontal cortex and activates your decision-making again. The backward count also creates urgency. It signals the brain that something is happening now. That small shift from passive thinking to physical motion is enough to change your entire direction. You may be thinking that this sounds too simple to work, but simplicity is what makes it reliable. The goal is not to master every behavior. The goal is to master the moment before the behavior begins. Once you take the first step, the emotional resistance fades. The body takes over. You do not have to finish the entire workout. You just have to start it. You do not have to complete the entire project. You just have to begin typing the first sentence. Action reduces the weight of the task. The more often you practice this, the faster it becomes automatic. At first, the count will feel strange. You may still hesitate. But with repetition, your nervous system begins to connect the backward count with movement, and eventually the habit becomes reflexive. You no longer need to talk yourself into action. You just act. This identity shift is subtle but powerful. You stop being someone who waits and start becoming someone who moves. You stop making excuses and start making decisions. You begin to trust yourself again, not because you have mastered everything, but because you know you will start. This tool can be used in every part of your life. Use it when you wake up and feel the urge to snooze. Use it when you are afraid to speak in a room. Use it when your finger hovers over a message you do not want to send. Use it when the workout feels too hard, when the paper feels too blank, when the task feels too big. The 3-step lunge does not require strength. It only requires movement before the mind can interfere. The point is not to be perfect. The point is to become someone who does not stall. Once you know how to break that first moment of resistance, everything else becomes manageable. You no longer fear starting. You no longer get buried in thought. You become someone who trains action like a skill. And when you do that, you unlock control. You create motion when others are stuck. You build momentum in the smallest of moments. You take control of your life 3 seconds at a time. So here is your first challenge. Today, choose one thing you have been avoiding. Nothing huge, just one action. The second you feel yourself pause, count down. 3, 2, 1. Then move. Start, interrupt the thought, kill it at the root, and take the step. Because the fastest way to change who you are is to move before your brain finds a reason not to. And the longer you train this, the more unstoppable you become. Chapter 3. Shrink the monster. Big tasks don't just overwhelm us, they paralyze us. The bigger the task feels in your mind, the heavier it becomes in your body. You look at the thing you need to do, write the report, start the workout, build the business, fix the relationship, and it feels too big to start. So instead of doing it, you stare at it, you think about it, you imagine how long it will take, how many steps it will require, how behind you already are, and without realizing it, you've built a monster in your mind, not a real one, a mental one, one made of assumptions, emotions, and exaggerated pressure, and that monster is what stops you. This is not a discipline problem, this is a scale problem. Most of what overwhelms us isn't actually hard, it just hasn't been broken down yet. And when something stays vague and large, it becomes emotionally loaded. You dread it, not because it's impossible, but because you haven't created a small enough entry point. That's the key. Big things don't get done all at once. They get done when you shrink them into something tiny and clear. That's how you take away the monster's power. You shrink it. Instead of saying, I have to write the report, say, I will open the document and type 1 sentence. Instead of saying, I have to clean the whole kitchen, say, I'll just wash 1 plate. Instead of saying, I need to run 3 miles, say, I will put on my shoes and walk for 1 minute. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but that is the point. Your brain doesn't want a mountain, it wants a foothold, and once you start, the friction drops, your resistance fades, because your brain no longer sees a monster, it sees a task, small, clear, safe. This is supported by a principle in behavioral science called task simplification. The smaller the first step, the more likely the behavior is to occur. Researchers studying habit formation at Stanford found that people were significantly more consistent when their goals started with micro-actions. Not just easy tasks, but ridiculously small ones. Writing a single sentence, doing 1 push-up, reading 1 paragraph. The reason this works is not because the goal is small, but because it creates momentum, and momentum is everything. Once your body moves, your brain follows. There's also a psychological shift that happens when you reframe tasks this way. Instead of asking, can I do this big thing? You ask, what's the smallest possible next move I can take? That question alone breaks the pattern of fear. It puts you back in control, because now you're not dealing with the whole monster. You're just dealing with 1 toe, 1 claw, 1 corner, and once you tackle that small piece, the next one becomes easier. You trick your brain into progress. This doesn't mean you're lowering your standards. It means you're creating entry points to success. You can still have big goals. You can still write the book, lose the weight, launch the company, rebuild your life, but you do it by breaking the mountain into pebbles and moving one pebble at a time, not because it's faster, but because it's possible. Try this today. Choose one task you've been avoiding, then break it down until it's laughably small. Not write 5 pages, but open the document. Not eat healthy all week, but prepare one clean meal today. Not get in shape, but stretch for 2 minutes. Then do just that. Only that, not the rest. Let that small action be the victory, because that small move is the doorway. And once you walk through it, the next move will be waiting. Smaller tasks are not weaker goals, they are better entry points. This is how you build consistency. This is how you outsmart overwhelm. You shrink the monster until it's too small to scare you, and then step by step you walk right past it. Chapter 4. Identity before intensity. You will never rise above the story you believe about yourself. That is the quiet truth most people miss. They try to change their habits without changing their identity. They chase intensity before they've upgraded who they are, and then they wonder why it doesn't stick, why the motivation fades, why the energy burns out. The answer is simple. You can't outperform your identity. You might push hard for a few days, maybe a week, maybe a month, but if deep down you still see yourself as inconsistent, lazy, anxious, disorganized, or weak, your behavior will always return to match that belief, because the brain doesn't want to live in conflict, it wants alignment, and if your actions don't match your self-image, one of them has to go, and for most people, the behavior is the first to break. This is why identity work matters more than intensity. Your goal is not just to do the thing. Your goal is to become the kind of person who does the thing. There's a difference between working out and becoming someone who never misses workouts. There's a difference between starting a business and becoming someone who solves problems without waiting for approval. There's a difference between writing a few pages and becoming someone who writes because that's who they are. Behavior is temporary. Identity is permanent, and when identity changes, everything changes. But how do you change identity? Not by thinking about it, not by hoping. You change it by choosing it, and then reinforcing it with action. Start with a simple statement that reflects the kind of person you want to be. One sentence, not a paragraph, not a vision board, just one clear, believable identity line you can repeat daily. Something like, I am someone who takes action before I feel ready. Say it in the morning. Say it before you start. Say it when you want to stall. Your brain is always listening, and the more you repeat something with emotion and intent, the more it begins to stick. Then you back that identity with behavior, tiny visible behavior. You do something each day that proves the sentence true. If your line is, I am someone who finishes what they start, then finish one thing each day, no matter how small. Close the tab, send the email, file the report. If your line is, I am someone who doesn't avoid hard conversations, then lean into one uncomfortable moment instead of running from it. These actions are not just wins, they are evidence. And identity is built on evidence. There's a principle in psychology called self-signaling. It means that every action you take sends a message to your subconscious about who you are. When you push through resistance, your brain takes note. When you delay again, your brain also takes note. These are not just behaviors, they are votes for identity. You are casting ballots all day, every day for the type of person you are becoming. And the more consistent those votes are, the stronger that identity becomes. That's why big, intense efforts often fail, not because people aren't capable, but because their identity hasn't caught up. You can run a marathon on grit, but to stay healthy, you need to become someone who sees movement as part of life. You can pull an all-nighter to finish a project, but to build a career, you need to see yourself as someone who creates daily. Intensity will get you started, but identity is what keeps you going when life is messy and motivation is gone. So here's your practice. Create your I am action card. Physically write it down. One sentence that reflects the version of you that takes action. follows through, and doesn't wait for perfection. Tape it to your wall, stick it to your phone, put it where you see it every day, and every time you read it, act in a way that proves it right. Not big moves, small signals, one step that reinforces who you are becoming. This is not about pretending. This is about training your brain to believe you. Because once your identity shifts, you don't need willpower. You don't need hype. You just act. It's who you are now. And when that happens, everything gets easier. Not because life changes, but because you did.